I never expected that sharing a tent with my best friend would change the way I saw him or myself forever. What started as another casual weekend away from the noise of city life turned into something I still struggle to explain, something that had been quietly growing between us, waiting for the right moment to surface. I thought I knew what we were. I thought I had our friendship figured out. But the way he touched me that night, under the safety of a shared blanket and a sky full of stars, rewrote everything I thought I knew about desire and about him. Luca and I met in junior high, two quiet kids thrown into the same group project on a rainy October afternoon. We'd stuck ever since, through awkward growth spurts, terrible haircuts, breakups, family messes, college rejections, and acceptances. We were the kind of best friends who didn't need to talk to understand what the other was thinking, who had our own language made of looks and shrugged smiles. People always asked if we'd ever hooked up, and we always laughed. We weren't the kind of close. Until we were. The trip was Luca's idea. 6 of us, 3 pairs of close friends or couples, stuffed our cars with cheap gear and snacks, headed 2 hours north to a spot near the lake we'd found on some hiking forum. It was supposed to be a chill weekend. Just nature, firewood, maybe some drinks, and an excuse to turn off our phones. We all needed it. School, work, the usual chaos of our early 20s, we were always pushing forward, burning out, crashing, and rebooting. By the time we parked near the trail and hiked in, the sun was already low behind the trees. We set up quickly, joking as we unrolled sleeping bags and swatted at mosquitoes. Amanda and Jess paired off immediately, claiming the red tent near the treeline. Ian and Tyler picked the gray one with the big flap. That left Luca and me with the green tent just off-center, a little tilted on uneven ground, but perfect in its own way. We'd shared tents before: road trips, summer hikes, spring break disasters. But as we laid out our gear and tossed our backpacks to the side, I felt something unfamiliar. Or maybe not unfamiliar, just undeniable this time. The way his eyes lingered when he handed me the flashlight. The quiet half-smile when we brushed hands. The stillness of his voice when he asked, "You okay?" Like he wasn't just asking about the hike. Night fell fast. The fire lit our faces in flickers as we passed around a bottle of something cheap and warm, the kind of drink that tastes better when your legs ache and your hands are cold. Everyone talked over each other. Luca leaned back beside me, his shoulder barely touching mine, and I didn't move. I liked it. I noticed it. When we finally crawled into our tent, the moon was high, the others laughing softly just a few feet away. Luca stripped down to his t-shirt and boxers, like always, and slid into his sleeping bag beside me. Our sides pressed together just slightly through the thin fabric. He exhaled a soft, steady breath. "Tired?" he whispered. "Not really," I said, staring at the tent ceiling, shadows moving with every breeze. Neither of us spoke for a while. There was space between us, not much, barely a hand's width, but it hummed with tension I couldn't name. I could hear every shift he made, every inhale. I felt his warmth beside me like it was calling me in. Something about the dark, about the quiet laughter outside, about the shared sleep space made everything feel suspended. Looser. Raw. I don't know how long we laid there like that. But when he shifted slightly and his leg brushed mine under the blanket, not an accident, not this time, I didn't pull away. And for the first time in all the years we'd known each other, I didn't want to. Sleep didn't come easily that night, not with him lying just inches away, his breath soft, his presence so close it made every part of me ache in ways I hadn't expected. I turned onto my side, facing the thin curve of his back, and I let my eyes adjust to the vague outline of him in the dark. The tent was quiet now. The fire had burned down. The other pairs had fallen into that hush of deep sleep, their murmurs faded into slow breaths. Everything was still except for my heart. I told myself it was just the closeness. That maybe the silence made everything feel more intense than it was. But that wasn't true. I'd been feeling something for a long time, hadn't I? That weird mix of comfort and need whenever he leaned his head on my shoulder. The way I'd catch myself watching his hands as he talked, or how my stomach would flip whenever he smiled in that half-asleep way only I ever seemed to catch. I never named it before, and now it was too loud to ignore. He shifted suddenly, not away, but toward me. Just enough for our arms to lightly brush. His skin was warm, his movement slow, like he was thinking before every breath. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. Then came his voice, so quiet I almost missed it. "You awake?" I swallowed, my throat dry. "Yeah." A pause. Then "Can't sleep." "Me neither." Another beat of silence. Then he let out a soft, nervous laugh. "Kinda weird sharing a tent after all these years, huh?" I smiled even though he couldn't see it. We've shared tighter spaces. He hummed. Yeah, but this feels different. My chest tightened. It does. That was all it took. That one quiet agreement. He rolled slightly, facing me now. I could feel the heat from his body through the thin barrier of our sleeping bags, the tension hanging between us like a thread stretched too tight. My breath caught as I felt his fingers brush the edge of my hand, testing, waiting. Then, slowly, they laced through mine, tentative, warm, shaking slightly. I squeezed back. His hand pulled away only to slip under the edge of the shared blanket and find my hip. His fingers pressed gently, tracing slow, searching lines across the fabric of my shorts as if asking for permission without words. I didn't stop him. I didn't want to. My body leaned into his touch like it had been waiting for it forever. My breath hitched as his fingers traveled further, resting just beneath the hem of my shirt. I reached up, touching his face, finding the curve of his jaw in the dark. We kissed without warning, without planning, mouths meeting with a clumsy kind of hunger that felt like a release of years we hadn't understood until now. His lips were warm, soft, a little unsure, but eager, open, real. My hand slipped around the back of his neck and he pulled me in tighter, our bodies pressing together under the shared blanket. His touch roamed across my chest, down my ribs, his palm flattening just below my waistband. Every inch of contact sent a wave of heat crashing through me. I returned it all, my fingers trailing down his spine, my knee brushing between his thighs, the quiet gasps we tried to swallow in the dark. We didn't say a word. We didn't need to. Outside, the forest slept. Our friends slept. The entire world had gone quiet. Hey, thanks for watching until this point. Please leave a comment if you're enjoying the video. It really helps us grow the channel and reach more people. And hey, thank you very much. Let's get back to story. But inside that tent, under that blanket, something enormous was happening, something tender and reckless, slow and inevitable. And whatever it wasn't just a one-night thing. The morning came too quickly. Light filtered through the nylon walls of the tent, pale and golden, bringing with it the early sounds of rustling sleeping bags, zippers unzipping, quiet voices, and the metallic clink of a kettle warming on the fire. It should have felt peaceful. It should have felt like every other camping morning we'd shared in the past. But everything was different now because I woke up tangled in Luca. His arm was slung over my waist, his forehead against the back of my neck, the warmth of his body still pressed against mine as if we hadn't moved at all during the night. And maybe we hadn't. Maybe neither of us dared to. I kept my eyes closed for a moment longer, listening to his breathing, steady and deep. I replayed every second from the night before, his hand on my stomach, his lips on my neck, the sound he made when our hips aligned under the blanket and we moved together, careful not to make a sound. It hadn't been rough or rushed. It had been careful, quiet, like something sacred happening between us. And now we were lying in the same spot, barely a foot from the other's tents, while the world woke up around us. He stirred a little. His arm shifted. You awake? He whispered, voice raspy, still half asleep. Yeah. A pause. That wasn't a dream, was it? I turned my head slightly, enough to glimpse his face. His eyes were open now, watching me like he was searching for something solid to land on. No, I said softly. It wasn't. He swallowed, his hand slipping away from my waist. He sat up slowly, rubbing at his eyes and combing a hand through his hair. I followed him, sitting up with the blanket sliding off our shoulders, the air cooler now. Neither of us moved to get dressed yet. Luca glanced at the tent flap, then back at me. Do you regret it? It hit hard, not because I did, but because he looked so unsure. Like he was bracing for something that might break him. I shook my head. No, not even close. He exhaled, shoulders dropping in quiet relief. Me neither. We sat there for another few minutes, just staring at the floor of the tent, the space between our knees. I've been thinking about doing that for months, he admitted finally, voice barely above a whisper. I looked at him, heart thudding again. Then why didn't you? I didn't think you'd want it, he said. Or if you did, that it would ruin everything. I nodded slowly. I was scared too. But last night, it felt right, he finished. We shared a small, nervous smile. Outside, we heard Jess laugh, followed by Amanda's voice asking where the granola bars were. The day had begun without us, and we were still wrapped in the fragile cocoon of something new, not yet ready to be named. Luca pulled on a hoodie, then passed mine over. We should probably act normal. Do you want to act normal? He paused, considering, then smiled, not nervously this time, but like he'd made a decision. No, but I want to take it slow. I want to get this right. I nodded, pulling the hoodie over my head. We can do slow. We unzipped the tent, blinking into the sunlight, stepping out into the ordinary world like nothing had changed, even though everything had. The others were already making breakfast. No one looked at us strangely. No one noticed the way Luca's hand brushed my back just briefly as we passed by. But I noticed, and when he looked at me over the firelight, eyes soft and sure, I knew something had started that wasn't going to disappear with daylight. Breakfast came with smoke and noise, the crackle of firewood, the hiss of instant coffee, and the dull clatter of someone accidentally kicking over a water bottle. Should have been normal. It was normal for everyone else. But for me and Luca, every sound felt louder, every glance sharper, every step more careful. We had crossed a line the night before, and now, everything between us felt new and breakable. Luca sat beside me on a log near the fire, just like always, but I could feel the difference in the way he didn't lean into me the way he usually would. He laughed at the same dumb jokes, tossed granola bar wrappers into the same plastic bag, nodded along when someone mentioned taking a canoe out after breakfast, but underneath it all, I could see it in his hands. The slight tremor, the way his fingers tapped too often. He was nervous. So was I. Jess and Amanda sat curled together like always, heads bent over a shared cup of coffee. Ian and Tyler were already packing for the hike they insisted on doing later, whispering to each other like everyone else didn't exist. None of them noticed us. Not really. But every time Luca looked at me, I felt it all over again. What we did, what we hadn't said out loud yet, what might happen next. After breakfast, we wandered down toward the edge of the lake with the others, skipping rocks and pretending like we weren't replaying last night in our heads. Luca walked beside me in silence for most of the way, only speaking when someone asked him something. He kept his hands in his pockets. I kept mine at my sides, and all I could think about was how they had been on each other just hours ago. At one point, when everyone else had moved ahead to the water, he leaned toward me slightly and murmured, "This is harder than I thought." I glanced at him. "Keeping it quiet?" He nodded, eyes on the path. "Yeah, I keep wanting to touch you." It hit me square in the chest. Not just the words, but the way he said them. So soft, so real, like he wasn't just talking about desire, but something deeper, something gentler. "You're not the only one," I said. We caught up with the others, throwing a few half-hearted stones into the lake, laughing when Jess slipped on the wet edge and nearly fell in. From the outside, we looked like every other friend group. But beneath the surface, the electricity between Luca and me was undeniable. Every time our arms brushed, I felt it. Every time our eyes met for a beat too long, I knew he felt it too. Later, after lunch, everyone crashed in their tents for a mid-afternoon nap. The sun warm, bellies full, the air lazy and still. Luca and I ducked back into ours, pretending to rest. But we didn't sleep. We lay side by side again, fully clothed this time, the air thick with silence and restraint. He turned toward me first, arm propped under his head. "Do you think they'll notice?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "Not unless we let them." He smiled just a little. "Part of me wants them to, just so I don't have to keep pretending." I reached out, brushing my fingers along his wrist, light enough that it could be mistaken for nothing. But it wasn't nothing. His eyes softened, and he moved closer, our foreheads almost touching, our breath shared in the small space between us. "I want this," he said, "whatever this is." And all I could do was whisper back, "Me too." We didn't kiss. We didn't push it. But we stayed like that until the others started rustling again, curled toward each other under a blanket of quiet honesty, hearts racing even in stillness. We were no longer just best friends. We were something else now. The second night felt heavier, not in a bad way, but like the air itself had thickened with everything we hadn't said out loud yet. We sat close again around the fire, knees brushing, the occasional glance turning into something more like a promise. The others laughed, drank, passed around a plastic bottle of something sweet and terrible, but I could barely hear it. I only heard Luca, the soft way he exhaled, the occasional hitch in his breath when our legs stayed touching just a little too long. We stayed later this time, not saying much, letting the crackling fire and the chorus of crickets do the talking for us. And when we finally retreated to our tent again, it felt less like routine and more like returning to a secret. Our space. Our silence. The place where the truth could breathe. Luca slipped off his hoodie, crawling into his sleeping bag without a word. I followed. The zipper buzzed as I closed the tent behind us, sealing us into a darkness that felt different than the night before. It wasn't tense. It wasn't awkward. It was charged. He laid on his side, facing me this time, eyes half-lit by the faint glow of the moon bleeding through the fabric of the tent. I mirrored him, close but not touching. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then, slowly, deliberately, his hand slipped under the blanket between us and then under my shirt. I gasped quietly, not from surprise, but from how good it felt. His hand was warm, fingers trailing gently across my stomach, then up to my chest, where he rested his palm over my heart like he wanted to feel it thudding. "You're shaking," he whispered. "So are you," I said. He leaned in then, his lips brushing mine softly, a kiss more careful than the night before. Not desperate. Not uncertain. Just full of something that had taken a long time to grow. His hand kept moving, trailing down again, this time slower, more certain. He pushed the blanket aside just enough to slip closer, our legs tangling, his thigh between mine, our bodies molding together with no more space between us. My hands found his waist, then his back, then his neck. I held him like I'd always been meant to. And then, under the cover of that tent, with our friends sleeping just feet away, we gave in. We were careful. Quiet. His mouth stayed close to mine, stifling the soft gasps we both couldn't suppress. Every movement was slow, deliberate, not just sex, but something closer to exploration, like discovering each other for the first time. His skin against mine, his hands gripping, guiding, memorizing every inch, it all felt so incredibly real. I never wanted it to end. We didn't rush it. There was no script, no plan, only instinct and the pull we'd both ignored for far too long. When we were finally still again, breathing heavy, pressed chest to chest beneath the blanket, he pulled me in and kissed my forehead like it was the most natural thing in the world. We lay there for a long time, tangled and quiet, letting the moment stretch without breaking it. Then he whispered, barely audible, "I think I've wanted this since senior year." I smiled into his shoulder. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't know if you felt the same. And I didn't want to lose you." I lifted my head to look him in the eye. "You didn't lose me." He leaned in and kissed me again, slow, full of something deep and gentle. "You found me." And under the stars, hidden in a tent barely big enough for two, it finally felt like everything we'd ever needed had been right here all along, waiting for this one night to unfold. The world was soft when we woke, mist curling low over the ground, sunlight just beginning to warm the tops of the trees, birds chattering faintly in the distance. The fire had long since burned out. Our tent smelled like fabric and pine and something more, something intimate. Something we'd made ours. I opened my eyes to see Luca already watching me, his cheek pressed into the sleeping bag, hair messy, face relaxed in that vulnerable early morning way. His hand was still resting on my side, as if he hadn't let go of me all night. "Morning," I whispered, voice still rough. He smiled, slow and real. "Hey." We didn't move at first. We just lay there, blinking at each other, the memory of last night heavy and full between us. But there was no tension now. No question marks hanging in the air. Just a quiet sort of knowing. "I'm not freaking out," he said softly, as if he was trying to convince himself too. "I thought I would, but I'm not." "Good," I replied, brushing my fingers across the back of his hand. "Because I'm not either." We stayed there until the sound of zippers and footsteps outside reminded us we weren't alone in the woods. Reluctantly, we shifted not away from each other, just toward the day. He pulled on his hoodie. I found my flannel shirt. Our eyes met again as we prepared to face the others, and he gave me this look, subtle but full of something steady. Something that said, "We're okay." And we were. Outside, Amanda was already boiling water for coffee, and Ian was stretching like he hadn't moved in 3 days. The world hadn't noticed anything different. But we had. We sat beside each other again, eating granola and sipping warm drinks. But there was a quiet magnetism now. Our knees brushed and didn't move. When he passed me his mug, our fingers lingered. No one said anything, but I caught Jess glancing between us once or twice, a knowing curve in her smile. Maybe she saw it, maybe she didn't, but it didn't matter. Later that afternoon, as we packed up camp and folded tents, Luca leaned over while I was struggling to roll my sleeping bag. "You free this weekend?" he asked. I looked up. "Why?" He shrugged. "Just thought. Maybe we could do this again. Just us." My heart kicked a little. "Yeah, I'd like that." As we walked back to the car, gear slung over our backs, I felt his hand graze mine. Not fully holding it, not yet, but close enough to make my pulse stutter. And when we got to the parking lot, and the others were loading up, he pulled me aside behind the car, out of view. He kissed me. It was soft, unhurried, confident in a way that said last night wasn't a mistake, that this morning wasn't a dream, that we'd found something. And when we drove back home, windows down, music low, our arms brushing between the seats, I knew it wasn't just a camping memory. It was the beginning of something real.